Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rockville City Police Department Public Safety Town Hall meeting. We're live here at the F. Scott Fitzgerald, right here at Rockville, Maryland. We're joined tonight by panelists of local law enforcement. That includes Metro Police, Montgomery Police Department, and also the Rockville City Police Department. We're also joined by Rockville City staff. And tonight, we're also joined by our city manager, Rob DeSpirito. Also, Mayor Bridget Donald Newton. For those of you who are joining us via the web, thank you, and please follow along. So without further ado, let's get into it. Please welcome Rockville City's Police Department Chief, Victor Brito.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for the introductions. Before we kind of get on, I'd like to introduce everybody up here on stage, if I can, please. Commander Liz Hattenberg from the Montgomery County Police Department, 1st District. Major Michael England, RCPD. Lieutenant Andy Crawford, RCPD. Lieutenant Andy Tagliente, RCPD. Lieutenant West, RCPD. Lieutenant Barry, RCPD. And representing the Metro Transit Police, Sergeant Barger, please. And if I can, I think it's important, the reason why we're here today is to talk about public safety. You can't do public safety without it being a team sport. You have to have everybody involved in our government. So I'd like to recognize our city staff here and our directors. For Planning and Development, Ricky Barker. Department of Public Works, Craig Siminow. Department of Public Works, Ahmad El-Shelfi. And Recreation and Parks, Chris Henry. Thank you. Also, I see a couple people in the audience. Chief Deputy Max Wee from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Our emergency manager for the city of Rockville, Dr. Mark Landau, is in the back. And someone that's very important, it's going to be very important to the Montgomery County government and the Rockville City Police Department and all the police departments. The newly nominated chair of the Police Accountability Board, Bishop Paul Walker. The last 2 years, actually 2.5 years now, our city, our region, our nation has experienced some of the most significant things that have occurred in American history. The COVID-19 pandemic. Never before in the history of American history have we faced such a pandemic that has put our country on its heels. The only thing that's even close is the 1918 pandemic and the Spanish flu. As we've navigated the COVID-19 pandemic in the city of Rockville, which we've done exceptionally well for our community and the people that we serve. On the heels of the COVID pandemic was the most significant social unrest in our nation's history regarding not postal employees, not other government workers, but the police. And how we've navigated that in our city has been extraordinary. Our relationships with our community remain strong and better than ever. It's because of our communication, our ability to exercise compassion and empathy, and understand that we are here primarily, and our goal is to help people. What we do in law enforcement each and every day is important to protect the members of our community. You know, arresting violators of the law and people that wish to do harm to others is significant for our law enforcement agency and all law enforcement agencies. But the larger part of that is helping people in their daily activities, their daily crises, things that are important to them that may not be involved with law enforcement-centric issues. And we do that exceptionally well in the Rockville City Police Department. But why we're here tonight is to listen and to hear from you and members of our community that things are important. We haven't been able to connect in the last 2.5 years like we wanted to. We've done a lot of virtual things, a lot of WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Zoom meetings. We've done all those type of issues. But what's really important is that face-to-face contact. That's why we wanted to do it here today and have our community here ask questions and us to be involved with each and everything that we do every day. So it's very, very important for us to have that communication. We do that on a regular basis with all of our community groups. But having this forum to have people come in and talk about law enforcement, talk about things that are important to them, and again, that involves not only the police department, but involves other city government agencies and our partners in law enforcement, the Montgomery County Police Department, the Metro Transit Police Department. That's very, very important. Where we're blessed here in the city of Rockville is that we have a number of different organizations, law enforcement organizations, that work together to protect and make our community safe and resilient. Not only the Rockville City Police Department, the Montgomery County Police Department, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department. We also have Metro Transit. We have 2 metro stations. We're the gateway to major transit situations, Rockville and Twinbrook. So we have to have, that partnership, and our partnerships are very, very strong as we work to make our community safe and resilient. So with that, we want to talk about public safety, questions you may have, things that are important and germane to you. So please, come up, let's have that conversation.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Like the Chief said, Rockville, you matter. Your safety matters, and we're listening. That's what we're here for. So I would like for us to practice the 3 C's tonight: communication, conversation, and courtesy. You see there are 2 microphones at the end of each aisle. If you have a question, please come up and state your name, the neighborhood where you live or where you're from, and then you can have your question. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. If no one has any questions, I'll go ahead and I'll start so that we can just start the conversation. So, Chief, one thing that you wanted to do with this public town hall was so that you can reiterate that the city is working on safety.
Yes.
Can you tell us some of those things that you're working on?
We work on a variety of different things, and it's very holistic. It's law enforcement centric. It's public works centric. It's planning and development centric. It's park and rec centric. The city doesn't work in a vacuum. We work together. And as I stated at the beginning, good policing is a team sport, and you have to involve everyone. Those of you that are old enough to remember Dragnet, in the old show, when you had Detective Friday. Detective Friday was, his whole point was, I see some of you smiling, you're showing your age. Okay, so, but Detective Friday's whole position was just the facts, ma'am. And that was it. It was law enforcement talking to our community. There was no back and forth. There was no communication from other parts of segments of society and community. We're different now. You cannot have a safe and resilient community unless you work together as a team. And you have to work together holistically, not only with law enforcement, but with our other city departments. In the city of Rockville, we do that exceptionally well. There's nothing that I don't have, or nothing that our fine directors here have on stage that we don't work together on. If we have questions, we talk about it, we work it out, and we work together to help use our city government to the betterment of our community. And that's really fundamentally it. Our goal is to make our community safe and resilient, and you do that together. It's not just words, they're actions in this city.
Now, you have brought fellow law enforcement officers here, particularly transit. Mm-hmm. One thing that a lot of people talk about is because Rockville does have their own metro station, mm-hmm. and making sure that they're safe. Did you want to speak to anything in reference to that and what the transit police provides to the city?
Sure. Again, this is Sergeant Barger with the Metro Transit Police.
So, as far as policing the metro stations and keeping the folks in Rockville safe, we always have at least one car and one officer, sometimes 2 officers, riding the trains, going car to car, making sure that things are the way they're supposed to be. We keep our folks up here to respond to calls for service. We do work closely with Rockville City. We have concurrent jurisdiction in our stations, and generally speaking, if it happens in our station, we take care of it. Stuff that happens on buses and things like that, we, whoever gets there first, we kind of hash out, who's gonna handle the case. But we have a good working relationship, and it's always an easy thing to figure out. But that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we have Mr. Becker from the Americana Center with a question. Go ahead.
So Chief, this is for you. I do want to say that you and I have talked a lot. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Totally have my support 100%. What I'm looking for tonight is, one, I have a general question. What you guys are going through as far as staffing.
Sure.
This applies to the police department, Montgomery County, I know state agencies and things like that. And I understand from talking to, I belong to a nonprofit, which we had the Maryland State Transportation Police Department or officers involved with it. And they have alluded to the fact that you're down a certain number of, I guess I'm using the wrong terms here, officers. This
Yes.
applies to the county.
Sure.
But you guys are trying to adapt or reach out and share resources and things like that. And I guess the thing I'm asking for tonight is, for us, what's the problem, which is an explanation question,
Sure.
and what can you do, if anything, because of the nature of the environment and things like that.
Sure.
Thank you.
John, thank you very much, and I appreciate all your support. Let me just talk about the most significant thing in law enforcement right now. The most significant thing internally, not only locally, not regionally, but nationally, is staffing. It is an enormous issue that we are down a number of different officers. Absolutely we are. Where we're fortunate here in the city of Rockville is that we work with a number of different agencies. But it's not just the Rockville City Police Department that is grappling with staffing. You look at every major city in this nation that is grappling with staffing. And it's for a variety of different things. Is that, during the social unrest of 2020, it was a difficult job to fill, probably the most difficult job to fill in America. To become a police officer in the state of Maryland is one of the hardest jobs to apply for and be able to become a police officer. So staffing is a huge issue. We've had a number of different officers that have left the profession just because they don't want to be in the profession right now. And those issues are very, very hard, and we're grappling with those issues. And we have a number of different things internally that we're working on, to retain our good police officers. It's something that every police chief, every sheriff in this nation is grappling with. It's something that is administratively is probably the biggest crisis that I've seen in American history when it comes to staffing. So we'll continue to try to hire and retain the best. The bottom line is that where I've seen it, and I've seen it with my former agency, the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, we went through a very hard hiring where we tried to hire a lot of people. The reality is that you can never still cut corners on staffing. The most important three things that I do in law enforcement as a chief is hire the right people, develop and train them, and conversely, all three of the times, hold them accountable. You can never cut corners when it comes to hiring a police officer. You have to have the right person to serve our community. You have to have the right person that has the communication skills, that has the heart and the passion and the empathy and to serve our community. It's a difficult, a very difficult task where we're welcoming another officer. We just hired one officer that will start the Montgomery County Academy in August. We have 3 more that we're looking very seriously at right now for hiring. But it's something, John, that we look at very, very hard. It's a difficult decision. A lot of people have left the profession, and frankly, there's a chief in Durham, North Carolina, that said it very well in an article. She says that the reason, and they talk, and there's staffing articles throughout the country, and if you look at it and you Google police staffing, it's everywhere. But the chief from North Carolina, from Durham, said 2 things. She says, the reason why we have this crisis, you're 1 step away from an indictment and 1 bullet away from death. The last 2 years have been the most violent towards police officers. More police officers have been shot and killed in the last 2 years, and one of the recording histories that the Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund have recognized. So it's a very dangerous profession. So it's very hard to do those things, but we'll continue to endeavor every day to get the right people on our job. Thank you, John. Yes.
Thanks again, Mr. Becker. And now we have Brigida from Twin Brook.
Hi,
Hi.
Chief. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Brigida. How are you?
Well, I've been here a lot longer than you have. 56 years.
Well, I got you beat. My family's been here for 64.
I know.
Okay.
I know that.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
just want to let you know I've been here
Okay.
a long time.
Okay. Okay.
I'm a little bit disappointed that we don't see more people here, especially since crime seems to be a real issue for some people, but I think they just don't know about it. And I have to tell you, I came from another event, so I know people are busy.
Yeah.
What I wanted to have you discuss maybe is the crime rate. And I know we've been hearing a lot of things
Sure.
locally, Montgomery County, and I really haven't heard too much in Rockville. We've been very fortunate. I wondered if you could just talk about the crime rate in Rockville,
Sure.
the crime rate in Montgomery County, Maryland, and then how we fit into this nationally. And I appreciate your job, and I love every policeman, and any officer that takes this deserves a medal, and the family too. This is a very tough job, and we all know why these things are happening. It's because the police department has not been getting the accolades that they deserve. So if you could just kind of talk about the crime rates,
Sure.
how we compare, and because I know there's a lot of things going on in Montgomery County, and I assume that you work with Montgomery County to some degree, because I know that then it's serious crimes that gets turned over to Montgomery County.
Sure.
But I've been in Twin Brook for a long time, and I know we used to have a neighborhood watch, and then we used to get these reports on things that happen. I don't see that anymore. We see little reports that come out, I think, weekly or monthly. Doesn't show a lot of crime in Rockville. I mean, I always look for where the streets are, what's
Sure.
happening. And so I think Rockville's pretty lucky, but then we are a small jurisdiction compared to Montgomery County. So if you could just kind of
Sure.
talk about the rate and how we fit in.
Sure, and that's a very good question, Brigida, so I appreciate that. There's a lot of different levels there and a lot of different layers of what you're talking about. Beside what John Becker talked about recruiting and staffing, that's one crisis that we have in America. The other crisis is the rise in violent crime throughout the nation, and a lot of our cities, a lot of our communities. Rockville's not immune to that. We've had our cases. The cases that we had with severe violent crime have not been random cases, though. They've been suspects that are known to one another, for the most part. When I look at Rockville's crime, overall, we're up about 12% where we were from 2020. And the large part of that is assaults that we've had. Most of those assaults are probably, you're looking at about a 30-some% increase, but those assaults are largely domestics and suspect knowns. Very few random cases, and so most of those are happening. We've had, our theft from autos have remained fairly stagnant, about the same. We're up about 4% to 6% regarding theft from autos that we've seen, year to date. Our stolen autos are actually down 31%. Which is kind of strange because they're up in Washington, they're up in Baltimore, they're up throughout other places. But we've had a rise in significant crime. I will say this, some of the violent crime that we've experienced in the city of Rockville, we've done very, very well, and we've closed those cases, significantly. And that's with the help of the Montgomery County Police Department's Major Crimes Division. That's just incredible. And in a minute, I'll turn it over to Commander Hattenberg to talk about Montgomery County and the first district. But we do things as a partnership that is extraordinary well. We're coming out of Washington and working in Washington. I work with some 30 different law enforcement agencies. Even though my former agency was the lead law enforcement agency in the District of Columbia, we worked in partnership. I have yet to see the partnership work as well anywhere than I've seen here in the city of Rockville with Montgomery County, the Sheriff's Office, and Metro Transit. That partnership has been strong. So when you extrapolate that out to the county, to the District of Columbia, Baltimore, nationally, you've seen a rise in a lot of violent crime. There's different prosecutors that do different things, in different communities. We're fortunate here to have a strong relationship with our state's attorney's office when we bring forward cases, to help adjudicate those cases, to take people and hopefully get people that want to do harm to one another and remove them from our community and do the best we can. So it's something that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and talk to everybody and say that, hey, Rockville has not experienced some significant things. We have. But largely, you know, we have done very, very well, and we have a very good community, and we have an exceptional police department that is selfless and helpful, you know, that do things every day for the betterment of our community and give of themselves. But we do that in partnership with things. And the most important things, and I see a lot of our community members out here that we talk to, and we talk about things. We talk about how we can work together. The most significant thing for us in our communities is the eyes and ears of others in our community, to share with them what they're seeing. And that becomes actionable for us. You know, so I hope that answers your question to the most part. Thank you,
Thank you.
Brigida. Thank you.
I appreciate you all being here. Kudos
you.
for all of my policemen.
Thank you.
Brigida.
Brigida, excuse me,
no.
Brigida, thank you very much. Thank you. Commander Hattenberg, if you'd like.
To stand over here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. As Chief Rita said, one of our biggest assets is our communication level with both Metro and Rockville City. Daily, myself and my executives are in communication with the city, as well as our investigators. We have information that we share back and forth that allows us to have a really good arrest rate on our crimes. I would say in the countywide, in the district-wide outside of Rockville City, our biggest issue is what we see countywide, which is our Part 1 aggravated assaults. That's an assault that has serious bodily injury. And although in the district we are up 60%, we've only gone from 16 to 31 from 2021 to 2022 in the first 6 months. So although we are up a large percentage, our numbers countywide look very good, and on the good percentage on that are people who know each other, so we are able to make a quick arrest. So the concern for the community at large is very limited. You're still very safe being in the city of Rockville, and we contribute that to several things. Is our officers who are out on the patrol every day are working with other departments and other stakeholders to make sure that if there's an issue, when we're in a meeting such as this, we hear from the community, where do you need us, where do you want us, and we work with our crime analysts to look at data-driven information to make sure we're in the right spot of where we need to be. And so I think all the parts put together make Montgomery County as well as the city a very safe place to be.
Thank you, Liz. If I can just add something, Kathy, real quick, and something I think is very, very important. Number one, I'd like to acknowledge Monique Ashton, our council member that came in. Thank you very much. Something that when we talked, and John, you talked about staffing, talked about, you know, crime in the city. Where we are different than I've seen in other communities, cities, and municipalities is that we have incredible strong support from our mayor, our council, our city manager. You know, I can't minimize that. That's just a fact. You know, there's nothing that I have not come to them with forwarding with, whether budget items or other issues, that they have not supported. That is a huge plus for the city of Rockville. You know, and I'm not saying that and because they're here and they're looking at me and everything else. I'm saying it because it's the truth. You know, there's nothing that my city manager has not done that we brought to him that we're trying to better our agency. You know, can we always move forward in another fashion and do things maybe differently? Of course we can, but we have a very, very strong mayor and city council and city manager that recognizes the things that we need, and we have that open communication. So thank you.
And our next question is from Joseph DiMaria.
Hi, I'm Joe DiMaria, and first I want to say thanks to all of you for your service. You're out there on the front lines every day, and I don't think you get the appreciation you deserve all the time. I live in the Roxborough neighborhood, which I'm sure you know where it is, but for others, if you get off of of I-270 at exit 6, there's a big sign that says First Baptist Church. There's a little neighborhood back there, very quiet. There's only 2 ways in and out. And we can hear 270 from where we are, from my house for sure, especially when the leaves aren't on the trees in the winter. And that's patrolled by the state police out of the barracks down there, on Montrose Road, right?
Yes.
And, you know, a few years ago, we had a real problem with racing on 270 and with these like swarming motorcycle groups that would come by. And the state police seem to have done a pretty good job of clamping down on that and putting an end to it. They had task forces out there and all. And lately, for reasons we can discuss later, I've been thinking a lot about how the city government relates to the state government. Now, I noticed that there's no one here tonight with the various agencies from the state police. Maybe they were invited, maybe they weren't, I don't know. But can you speak generally about your relationship, the department's relationship with the state police and with the state government in general?
Sure. I'll speak to the state police. That's pretty much in our wheelhouse with the Maryland State Police. I'm fortunate is that, you know, many moons ago, I was involved with the state police when I went to grad school with all the hierarchy of the Maryland State Police. So I know a great deal of people there. Spent a lot of time and many years with them. Our state police relationship is a strong one. We have issues that have to do with their patrolling 270 in areas that are germane to the state police. We have those conversations. We share information that we're seeing and feedback we have from our community. But we also, are involved in task force that they do. We're also involved in task force that we've had for loud exhausts, information with special equipment repair orders that we've had to deal with people that have modified loud exhausts, and the city of Rockville has written, I would probably say, more than most agencies. We've written almost 600 citations regarding those issues, and hundreds of citations to help that. But usually when it comes to our relationship with the state police, usually we'll correspond with the barrack commander, talk to them about issues that we have and share with them, and hopefully come to a resolve that we can work together to help solve those issues that in your community and other communities. We see, I'll give you an example with our relationship. We've had a couple of issues that were high-profile issues in the city of Rockville. Not only did the Maryland State Police respond, and they came very quickly. Most of them were probably in court in downtown, but the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, the Montgomery County Police Department, obviously Rockville City Police Department. So the relationship is always strong, but again, we always try to, when we have constituents and our community members that have issues that are largely germane to the Maryland State Police and their protection and their ability and their deployment on their highways, we deal with them very, very, very uniquely. It's a very unique relationship, and it's been very positive. So thank you.
Wait for more questions from the audience, because I know there's some people that you're thinking about something. There's something you might want to ask. That's what we're here for, because we're listening. And this, even though the seats may feel empty, you're here, and we appreciate you being here, and we want to hear from you. But while we wait and everybody gets their thoughts together, I understand that there's you just hired a mental health advocate.
Yes.
To the department. If you could speak more to that, because I know a lot of people, especially with everything that has happened in the last couple of years with police and their relationship to people who do have mental issues, because sometimes acting on a second, it could go left or right or really bad, or really, if we don't have somebody like that. But I understand that the RCPD does have someone that.
Kathy, thank you very much. You know me too well. I appreciate that. Let me just talk about mental health in general and our law enforcement response to people in crisis. It's significant. You've seen a number of different watershed moments and significant high-level incidents that law enforcement is involved with when people are in mental health crisis. That's very, very, very important. We respond in the city of Rockville to about 1,100 calls for service with people in mental health crisis. We have Picard, we have the crisis center. That's significant for us. Now, those are just the calls that are dispatched and triaged out of 911 that people are in mental health crisis. Those are just those people. It's significantly when we respond to a call for service with maybe an auto accident, maybe it's a crime in progress, maybe it's trespassing, suspicious persons. we make a determination, oftentimes those people are in mental health crisis. You could almost threefold that 1,000. So if you factor that in, you're looking at about 8 to 10, calls for service sometimes we have a day dealing with that. All of our officers, almost 50% of the members of the Rockville City Police Department are CIT trained. And that CIT training for help us manage people in mental health crisis is put on by the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. They've been exceptionally helpful to us, but it's a 40-hour-week course. All of our officers go through some sort of CIT refresher during in-service training that's mandated by the state of Maryland. The Montgomery County Police Department has a wonderful academy which we go through for in-service and our recruit training. So let me just talk a little bit about what we're doing in the city of Rockville. And again, this is with the support of the mayor, our council, our city manager. I certainly recognize that we are going to a lot of calls for people in mental health crisis. What are we looking for? We're looking for the best outcome. We're looking for the best outcome for that person in crisis. All of you know that law enforcement is 24/7. We wear many hats. We're priests, we're rabbis, we're teachers, we're marriage counselors, we're mechanics, we do everything. So who do you call when most of government has gone home and they work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? Who do you call in late and unusual hours in the evening, 1 o'clock in the morning? Who do you call when you can't get anybody else? You call the police. And that's been a mainstay in American society for decades and decades and decades. But oftentimes, we're not the right person to respond to that. Even though we have 40 hours of training, which is very, very good, helps us put another tool in our tool belt and navigate those people in crisis. So what we've done in the city of Rockville is we've developed a co-response model. What is a co-response model? Co-response model is marrying a police officer with a mental health clinician that rides with our police officer and that goes on scene to those calls to help navigate those people in crisis for a better outcome. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for better outcomes. And that mental health crisis counselor, clinician that's with us, is very, very important. Now, in Montgomery County, they have Mobile Crisis 44, which is throughout the state, throughout the county. Well, Montgomery County is the most populated county in the state of Maryland. It's also very large. It's in the top 5 largest counties geographically in the state. Mobile Crisis, or MC44, could be anywhere in the state, anywhere in the county. When we need someone now, to navigate that. Time and distance are very, very important for us. So if we do not have someone to respond, we have to wait for them, and maybe they're not even available. So we have to navigate that on ourselves. So the city of Rockville took an incredibly forward step, is that we are working with the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services, and we're very close to hiring our first mental health clinician to be embedded in the Rockville City Police Department. Fundamentally, we're looking for better outcomes for people, how we treat people, how we navigate their crisis, big, small, or everything in between. It's very progressive for us. It's going to be very good for our community. Now, one mental health clinician will cover all watches? Certainly it won't. Anyone that's done scheduling, you know what a 24-hour schedule means and what that means to have X amount of bodies. But it's a first foundational step that's positive for our city. And we're going to be the first municipality in Montgomery County to do that. So it's a beautiful thing for us.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Jamie, right, from Twinbrook?
Hey, Chief. Good evening. Good evening. Two-part question on traffic enforcement.
Sure.
So the first part of the question is, while anecdotal, I think in talking to my neighbors and friends, there's a perception that throughout the county there's been worsening traffic violations, partially caused by the pandemic. I'm not sure that's true, but I hear people complain about increased aggressive driving, increased speeding. Since you have access to that data, I was hoping you can address those concerns, whether or not you have seen an increase over the last couple of years. The second part of the question is kind of tied to that. In light of the city and county's Vision Zero policies and plans, how do the city and county coordinate on traffic enforcement to maximize resources, particularly in light of the fact that there's less officers, to engage in some of those strategies like visual enforcement throughout the city?
Sure.
Thank you.
I also like to recognize Jamie Espinoza, who just spoke. Jamie is part of our Community Policing Advisory Board. So thank you very much, Jamie. So Jamie's here tonight. I see Jamie every month and we talk every month. So let me talk about a little bit about traffic. Probably the most significant issue that I hear from our community members is traffic related. John will tell you, we talk about, John will tell me, because John's told me many times, loud exhaust, vehicles engaged in speed contests, aggressive driving. That is the most significant issue that we deal with in the city of Rockville, bar none, on any issue. How we try to engage it, we've had details, we've had traffic enforcement details, we've had pedestrian details. In the city of Rockville, which is in the Montgomery County's 1st District, we work very, very well with the Montgomery County Police Department in traffic enforcement and details that we've had. We've worked with the Maryland State Police. So those issues are very, very important to engage people and look at behavior and check that behavior. We have a very robust automated traffic enforcement program in the city of Rockville with red light cameras and speed enforcement cameras. Those are a force multiplier for us to help us reduce speeds and reduce people that have aberrant behavior. So those things are very important, and I can have Lieutenant Barry can speak about that, but if Commander Hattenberg can talk about our relationship with the county regarding traffic enforcement.
Thank you, Chief. You're 100% right. During the pandemic, when so many people were at home, our roads were more wide open. And unfortunately, some of our fine citizens took advantage of that and decided that would be a good time. We noticed, unfortunately, serious accidents as well as fatal accidents. We did have an increase on excessive speed, and sometimes almost into the triple digits. So you are 100% correct that has increased. What we've done with the county and the city is, again, we're very data driven. We get complaints from citizens via email, community meetings, and we work with that. But we also work with our crime analysts who will look at every accident that comes in, every speed ticket, whether it's from us or from an automated camera, whether it's a red light ticket that's been automated, and starts putting packages together. And once a week we'll get a package that we share that will say, here's an area that we think we need enforcement with. Montgomery County has gone to a centralized traffic division instead of each district having their traffic. So we have one large group, and they they rotate through the districts, and when they come to the Rockville district, we'll sit down with them and say, here's where our data says I need you, here's what the city's having an issue, here's, for us, our main arteries, Shady Grove, 355, Montrose, so those are our primary areas of concern. They always have, and I think they always will be, but that's where our data says I need to have my officers. So that's how we deploy, that's how we work with the city, and that's how we take what little resources we have and where we put them to work the best, to try to get the best results. And we also have automated cameras and speed cameras, and they do the same thing. They rotate through and they look at areas for accidents and speed, and they put them in those places to get the best resources back.
If I can, Lieutenant Barry, can you come up and talk a little bit about the city's automated traffic enforcement program? I think that's really important to talk about because it's a huge force multiplier for us. With our cameras that we have set up for red lights, for speed, it's a big issue, so thank you.
So good evening, everybody. Again, as the chief mentioned, I'm Lieutenant Barry. So I oversee the Administrative Services Bureau, which is, in part of that is our photo enforcement services. So as both the chief mentioned and Commander Hattenberg mentioned, in addition to officers in patrol doing traffic enforcement, we do have a robust photo enforcement section that does, we have both fixed cameras, portable camera units, and mobile vans that are deployed out every single day. So with that, we, just like when we're monitoring traffic data for in-person enforcement, we're also doing that with our photo enforcement, seeing where the most needs are for us to deploy our cameras. So as I mentioned, we do have fixed poles for speed and for red light enforcement, and those are stationary, they don't move. But we have more the portable units that we can move out throughout the city and deploy where they're needed. And then our vans that are staffed by our photo enforcement employees, they move around the city every single day, and you probably see them out on the road, especially if they flash at you. But we're able to deploy them wherever they're needed, and where we find our most important needs are. We're always evaluating that and determining where we need to add additional site codes, and where we need to determine if we need to have more cameras in that area, what the issues are, whether they need to be speed or red light cameras.
Thank you, John.
All right, we have Bishop Walker with a question. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. How are you, Chief? All of the panelists and community members. I just wanted to say that in reference to the PAB and the Police Accountability Board, of course, we will receive police misconduct complaints and review outcomes of certain disciplinary matters according to the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability. I like to say that as the county executive's PAB chair nominee, I believe that, and I'm confident that my ministry and my professional and personal life experiences has matured me into a well-rounded person and a well-balanced and a growing character that has been witnessed and recognized by Montgomery County elected officials and civic leaders, community leaders, and religious leaders, as well as those individuals whose lives that my ministry and work has impacted. I was asked, if confirmed, how will I work to ensure the Police Accountability Board is seen as illegitimate to both police and community? My answer was I would accomplish this by presenting the PAB to both the community and the police as being transparent and a fair-minded board that will conform to the rules and laws and thoroughly and fairly investigate all complaints for police misconduct made by its citizens and determine whether or not the evidence supports the complaint of misconduct and bringing that complaint to a justified conclusion. I'd like to present that answer to not only you, sir, but even the representative for Montgomery County and even for the, I believe it's Metro Transit, excuse me, because we know that most of these negative encounters start usually at a simple traffic stop. So again, sir, my question would be, how would you work with the PAB in its transparency and being legitimate in how we communicate and will work together in the near future?
Well, Bishop Walker, thank you very much for that question. And I've gotten to know you, pretty well in the few times we've had the opportunity to meet. So thank you very much for being here. I certainly know you to be a fair and reasonable person. I think anything is that, we're going into a new process July 1st of this year. The Maryland State Legislature enacted HB 670, which has to do with the Police Accountability Board and the Administrative Charging Committee regarding police complaints by citizens. It's a stark departure, which was the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, which was the oldest one in the state of Maryland, in the nation. So it's changed dramatically. But to answer your question is that we will work with good hearts and good communication and transparency to provide the best outcomes for those issues, and hopefully to ensure transparency and fairness for everyone involved. I think that's very, very important. You can expect nothing but transparency and us working collaboratively together for the better outcomes for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think you know this person here.
I think I recognize the name.
Madam Mayor Bridget Newton.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I decided I better stand up, or people think I'm just sitting there to smile at you all.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you all for being here tonight, and to our senior staff, thank you. I'm sure there will be questions for you in a minute, but unfortunately, especially after today's decision by SCOTUS, I'm here on 2 counts. One is to ask you all what that means for you and how much more difficult I think it will make it for all of us. And number 2 is just to follow Jamie's comment about the speeding. Tonight as I was coming here, 2 cars ran the stop sign at Maryland and East Jefferson going south. I decided, okay, it's my turn, I get to go. A third one almost hit me. So I know we're understaffed, but I think we need a lot more oversight, especially in the town center. I know that's not easy, but I think we've got to do something there. But back to the question that I stood up to talk about a few minutes ago on SCOTUS and the decision to repeal New York's law on open carry. It makes me very concerned for you who take an oath to take a bullet for any of us, and just how we're gonna manage going forward. And I thank you all for your service. I really do. It takes a very special person to put on the uniform and make that promise. So I stand here thanking you, but also saying, what can we do to help now that we've entered, a whole new world?
Mayor, let me talk about, the case that our mayor speaking about. It comes out of New York, which has to do with some of the onerous requirements that the New York State had regarding concealed carry. You had to basically show cause why you had to get a concealed carry permit. But let me just kind of talk to you a little bit blankly about the nation, and we talk about handguns, and we talk about concealed carry. Half of the country, 50% of this nation, has constitutional carry, which has no permitting process at all. 50% of this nation, 25 states, have constitutional carry where you can carry a weapon concealed without any requirement, no background check, no requirements for training, no fingerprinting, none of those issues. The state of Maryland is very, very difficult to get a concealed carry permit. You have to basically kind of show cause, very similar to New York. So I would anticipate that that's coming to a theater near us very quickly, because the Supreme Court decision applies to all these states. So my best guess is that it's going to happen in Maryland. Maryland's law is very similar. District of Columbia's law is very similar to Maryland State and those other states. But we're bordered by states that have, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia that have have open carry. You can carry a weapon 6-gun style, on the outside of your weapon, walk down the side of the street with a firearm right on your side. You can do all sorts of that, Wild West style. So constitutional people that abide by the Constitution and those issues, those are important. But anytime you have more guns, there could be a propensity for mishaps and those type of things. So ultimately, what I see in the state of Maryland is that New York's Supreme Court ruling, that's going to affect the ability for the state, and I believe the state police are the ones that manage concealed carry permits, and they do that very well. So I think that will have wide-ranging effects here in this state and other states that have specific protocols that you can get a concealed carry permit. So ultimately, like I said at the beginning, more police officers have been shot and killed with firearms in the last 2 years than almost in any time in our history. It's significant for us. It concerns me for the men and women that protect everybody in our community each and every day. Constitutional firearms ownership, absolutely fine. But when you start seeing that extrapolated into, concealed carry permits and open carry, constitutional carry, do your research, go Google constitutional carry. Half the nation can carry a firearm without any regulation whatsoever. And that's significant for us. So thank you, Madam.
Very important information. Eric?
Yes.
Good evening, Chief. Thank you very much for setting this up. I had 2 questions. Now I have 3 questions.
Okay.
One of them is specifically about the gun issue that was brought up now. I am pretty sure we're going to start seeing a lot more people open carrying, pushing the boundaries. It's just, I think, we're just going to see that. And I wanted to know what steps are you taking to train your officers when they encounter such people, which I think is just a matter of time before you're going to start seeing them open carrying around and just pushing the boundaries.
Well, let me just talk about open carry. We don't have any open carry law in the state of Maryland.
Right, that's why I'm saying that.
If we see someone with an open carry pistol, we will make a stop, we will develop probable cause, and we will make an apprehension, period.
Yeah.
You can't carry Wild West style in the state of Maryland. You can't do that. You can do that in Virginia, you can do it in other states, you can't do it here. It's a violation of the law, period.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of
Yeah.
long guns, things like that,
Yes.
people that can go
No,
just to get.
no.
get-
Our officers are very well trained to spot, the characteristics of people carrying armed. There's a lot of very good training that we've gone through about characteristics of armed people, so we recognize those things. The bigger issue, that we've seen is the rise and use illegally of unserialized firearms, AKA ghost guns.
Right.
Very big issue. We've recovered numerous of those type of weapons in the city of Rockville. I know Montgomery County has also. And now Maryland has a new law, which is another tool for us, to add to a charging document. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. My second question was about accountability. And you spoke about the new bill that was passed by the legislature.
Yes.
Opening up some of the personnel files and information that used to be kept from the public. However, we have seen that other agencies in Maryland, police agencies, have been pushing very hard against the law. They have come up with new rules, or they're just not responsive to information that is asked for them, we have been given the right to get that information now with the new law. So I'm wondering, what policy have you put in place to comply with the new law, and more importantly, to comply with the spirit of the law in bringing sunshine into your department?
Well, very good question. The law is the law. We have to abide by every letter and sentence of it. Don't have that luxury to say, no, it's a job requirement. Under HB 670, you have a variety of different things that we have to go through, different use of force training. We have to sign a pledge that we've gone through that training. We have to sign a pledge that about the sanctity of life, those issues. The bottom line is that change is part of our society, is part of our culture. Things change. We have to adapt with those issues. The law is the law. The Montgomery County government has put together the Police Accountability Board and the Administrative Charging Committee. And we are part of that as a municipality. The law says specifically that municipalities will abide by their county regulations, in which we were going to do. Again, as Bishop Walker mentioned, is that it's very, very important for us is that the process is fair, it's transparent for our officers and our community together. You can't have it one way or another. Police accountability is exceptionally important, but also is rewarding good police work and good police behavior. You can't have one without the other. You have to reward good police work, but you also have to have accountability, because that's very, very important for all of us. So you can't have one without the other. You just can't say, I'm going to reward great police work and not have accountability. What you've seen throughout this nation in every aspect of it is that you've seen behaviors that have gone unchecked, in certain agencies, not here, but other issues. You've seen behaviors where, you've seen individuals commit heinous crimes. I can tell you right now is that our police officers don't wake up in the morning and put their 2 feet on the ground and say, I'm going to do something bad to somebody. This doesn't happen like that. What happens is that you have leadership that sees behaviors and don't address it, whether it's something small. And what happens, just like with children, with anybody else, is that when you see behaviors, what's our goal as managers and leaders in law enforcement? Is to change behavior. When you see an aberrant behavior, you want to change it from the low level. But when that doesn't happen, things graduate. And then what happens is you create monsters, okay? And you have to address behavior. But most things start at the small level. In the city of Rockville, we have great police officers that do great things. None of us are without, making mistakes. But most mistakes are a training opportunity for us to move forward. Whether it be someone's a little gruff, maybe they're having a bad day, and maybe they come out of their mouth in a specific issue. But let me just give you like a little picture real quick. And Kathy's kind of looking at her watch because I know she wants to pull me right now. But
I was trying to be subtle, but go ahead.
Let me just tell me,
No,
Kathy,
no,
give me 1 second.
People need to hear it.
Let me just tell you one thing is that when you look at a police officer throughout this country, we all kind of look the same for the most part. We all have uniforms. They may wear white shirts, blue shirts, black shirts, tan shirts, very handsome, Max, very handsome, very handsome. But you'll see a police officer, when they walk, they'll have a duty belt on. Old school, it's called a Sam Brown. but now it's called a duty belt. You'll see a police officer with a firearm, maybe a taser, handcuffs, OC spray, a police radio, which is $5,000 to $8,000. Those are great tools that will protect you and protect the officer. But one tool that doesn't get spoken about enough, the most important tool that a police officer has, is his or her mouth. If they can't communicate, we can't do our job. We need good communicators. And that's the whole thing, is that we have good communicators on our police department. So thank you very much. Thank you.
One more question if I may. No.
Let's go ahead and get someone, and then we can come back to you, okay? Lucid?
Good evening.
Hi, Ms. Hall.
First, I want to say that I have nothing but respect and gratitude for each of you who wear the uniform. It means a lot to me, and I think it means a lot to our communities. I heard you talk about a holistic approach to public safety, and one thing that I feel is that a neighborhood looking safe is going to be safer, and I'm talking about things like unlicensed cars, expired tags on cars, things with boarding houses and people coming in and out. And I just wanted to know, what other departments in the city do you work with, or do you each other work with, in order to kind of keep these things under control?
Ms. Hall, thank you very much. Always wonderful to see you, and thank you always for your support. When it comes to cars that are unlicensed and are on public right-of-ways, our parking enforcement officers, and John, if you want to talk a little bit about that, when we get notified regarding a car that's unlicensed, expired tags, and they're abandoned or whatever, our parking enforcement officers and our police officers can have that taken care of. We can ticket it, we can tow it, and those issues. When it comes down to nuisance properties, you know, properties that are out of repair, we work very closely to our Department of Planning and Development and Ricky Barker's shop. You know, we'll talk about it, and he has a team of incredibly dedicated employees that will come out and, you know, talk about those issues. We've had a number of different collaborations. Ricky, do you want to talk about some of those issues?
It's a good question. One of the important parts of our direction from the mayor and council is that we want a high quality community. We want a safe community like we're here tonight. And so all these things kind of blend together like the chief said. And so our department and our code enforcement staff do patrols, but we also operate on complaints as well. And so any of the junk vehicles or things that are in yards that shouldn't be there, boarding houses, complaints about too many people in houses, we basically go and approach those and try to resolve them. And so that's real important. And so anyone that's listening, or anyone that sees something, because we only a certain number of staff members, but we expect on the community to help us do our job by letting us know if you see something that doesn't seem right. You see, a number of strange peoples going in and out of houses. That could lead to a violation of our code. So most definitely a good question, and we, like the chief said, we work as a team and want to provide not only that level that our residents expect in their community. So thank you.
Ms. Hall, can I just add a little bit something, because there's multiple facets to safe neighborhoods and neighborhoods that function well. There's also infrastructure issues, whether it be sidewalks, streets, pothole, things that are those nature. And again, our Department of Public Works, Craig Seminow, has been incredible partner with us, as is Recreation and Parks. When we have issues with, if we have a vehicle accident, we have an injury, a pedestrian accident, all those members of all of our, Department of Public Works, they're kept in the loop regarding those issues, so they can look at those issues if there's something structural, something infrastructure-wise that they can work at. If it's not city, if it's state, I can tell you is that Craig Seminow and Ahmad Shelfi, they press the state very, very well on getting things fixed, and they work very hard. So it's a very holistic approach with all of us. But when those issues you have with vehicles and abandoned vehicles, cars and tags, we'll handle that some of the issues with code, with code and nuisance properties, planning and development will help with that too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hall. And now let's turn to Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening. My name is Reardon Sullivan. I'm actually running to be the next county executive here in Montgomery County. I wanted to say that part of my platform is complete support and funding of the police. And I want us to take, I think I can speak for everybody else here in the auditorium, and thank you for your service, because without you, I don't really know what we do. A couple quick questions for you. Number one, I was hoping you could speak a little bit about the Police Accountability Board versus the Police Accountability Commission, aka what's done at the state level versus what's done at Montgomery County. Also speak a little bit about qualified immunity and how that affects how you are approaching policing. And finally, the funding of the police. One of the things that I've seen in Montgomery County, they changed the budget. They actually cut, I believe, $3 million from the budget in FY22, and that was a loss of, I believe, 63 FTEs. And I was hoping you might be able to say a few words about those items. Thank you.
Let me just take your Police Accountability Board question. That's first. I can't speak to the state's process because we don't avail ourselves to the state's process. Currently, as of today, we have to abide by the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, which is codified in Maryland Public Safety Article 3, 101 to 3113. The new process which takes place, which the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights is no longer here in the state of Maryland. The longest Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, I believe it was 1977 here in Maryland. The Police Accountability Board is that I'm an optimist. I look at the glass being half full, or as somebody very close to me says that your glass is always full. So I believe in optimism, and I believe in that the Police Accountability Board, the Administrative Charging Committee, will be transparent, they'll be fair, they'll be reasonable, and I believe they'll listen, to us, So I believe that's a positive. Again, this is a new process. It's been almost 40 years, that we've been in the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, as I said, which is codified under 3101 to 3113. It's going to be a different departure, from how we do business. I'm hoping and I'm optimistic that it's going to be well, and we have fine people like here, like Bishop Walker, here will be the chairperson. So your next question, you talked about qualified immunity. There's no law in the state of Maryland that has been passed anything to change qualified immunity. Qualified immunity has been around for decades, not only for police officers, for administrators throughout the state, in government. Basically, depending on their actions, shielding those individuals that act with good faith from certain lawsuits and those type of things. I think as you've seen throughout most of the nation, not only Maryland, when people don't operate in good faith, I think there's other remedies, that have taken place. So again, there's nothing in the legislature that I'm aware of that has changed anything about qualified immunity in this state or federally. Your last question was about money?
Funding. I know Montgomery County has actually took $3 million out of the budget. Yeah. And I know that was a loss of, I think, 63 FTEs.
Sure.
And I wonder how that's affected, because you're in Rockville, you're working with Montgomery County.
We work with Montgomery County, but we're an independent municipality. The city of Rockville has not done any such thing. Right. The city of Rockville has been incredibly supportive of our police department. When you look throughout this nation, when there has been city councils, municipalities, and other government entities throughout the nation, our city, our elected officials have been resolute in supporting the things that we do in our city. So for that, I'm grateful and I'm blessed. So thank you very much.
And one of those governing body members is Councilmember Ashton. She has a question.
I just wanted to note that I really appreciate our residents for being here, and there are many online, and folks who have reached out to me and said they couldn't be here, but they're watching you online. So thank you for having this important town hall. I have been taking copious notes as well as listing some of the things that I've heard from residents. So it'll be a multi-part question, but I know that you can expect that from me.
I'm prepared.
First, I just wanted to say thank you for making this a team sport and for doing that every day. I want to acknowledge that we have folks from, people who care about the state level work, county, city, as well as metro. It really does take that. But also, an important part of safety is city staff and the city leadership. And so I'm really happy to see planning, code enforcement, DPW, and rec and parks, because it takes all of us to make the city safe. Just a couple of observations and some things that I know that you have advocated for, and Mayor and Council and our city manager have been trying to do. One is making sure that there's some additional steps so that we don't start losing. You think about retention as well as recruitment are two important factors. So this Mayor and Council during the budget process added some steps so that it can help you as a department retain. Other comment I wanted to make is that you, as our chief, came to Mayor and Council with the idea of a language stipend to be able to serve the diverse residents of our city and to be able to communicate, as you were speaking earlier, and making sure that as your officers are out, there are multiple languages that people can engage with our officers in.
Yes.
Also, the leadership on the Community Policing Advisory Board, that has been a really important part of getting our community to be active and engaged, as well as just providing counsel to support how you have been leading this department in terms of a community approach. And before it became a national trend, the Rockville City Police Department has been a leader in really thinking about diversity and inclusion, as well as making sure that there is no bias. We can't say that it's all a race, but we're going to be training our leadership and our community members. So just a huge thank you for that. And then another big thing that happened in the past year is just the city and other municipalities in Montgomery County were successful in finally getting some tax duplication monies returned to the city or brought to the city so that we can support public safety through transportation, Vision Zero, as well as the police department. So I just want to thank you for your support on that, and then the mental health leadership, that's something that is new to the department. So I just wanted to share some of the ways that we've been listening to our community. A couple quotes that I can think about from you, and I'll just say, to quote Chief Brito, is, you all confront our society sometimes when they're experiencing their worst day. And you run to danger when other people are running away. And that takes a lot of courage, but it takes a lot of caring for our community. So thank you for that. Two other points that I think are germane to what I'll say next is you can't arrest your way out of the problem. You have to think about, and I know we've talked, and I have a direct line to you to say, what can we do to learn from the situation? How can we prevent it in the future? And part of that is another quote you'll say is, never forget your humanity, and thinking around the problem. So I just wanted to note some of the things that we've been talking about with rec and parks, as well as how do we think about lighting in places where there may be high opportunity for crime. That's just one question. The next question I've gotten from a resident is, how can we get folks to be more comfortable in calling the non-emergency line when they feel like there's a safety issue or concern? My other question relates to rec and parks. We have seen across the country where the pandemic has had a major impact on mental health, financial constraint, idle hands, and some of our youth engaging in activity just because of all the pressures. And so I just got a figure from Rec and Parks, our director Tim Chestnut, and I see that Rec and Parks is represented here as well. Perhaps they may want to make a comment, but there's been a 164% increase in the financial aid request for those services, for programming support to be able to join our Rec and Park programs. To me, that signals that there is financial pressure in the community, but also it's an important part of preventing. It's not just about arresting a way out. The problem is, how do we give people positive ways to engage in our community and keep them occupied and productive and positive. And then since DPW is here as well, just want to talk through, some of the things that you're focused on in terms of Vision Zero, because a big part of public safety is just being able to walk and bike in our city and make sure that it doesn't feel like your life is at risk in doing so. So I'll just pause there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ashton, before we get to DPW and Parks and Recreation, you said something that we talk about all the time, is that we answer calls for service, we go to people every day in some level of crisis. It could be small, it could be large. You can never forget your humanity, because that call for service could be someone's worst day. It could be somebody stole a package off their porch. Could be they had a car accident for the first time. They had an interaction with a police officer. So you never can forget your humanity. And empathy is a huge deal. And what I say to, I say to my son and I say to many others is that when you wake up in the morning, go to that medicine cabinet, open up that medicine cabinet, pull out that jar of empathy and take a big swig of it, and understand that sometimes people are put in positions that we have to understand why they're in that position. And you have to have empathy and compassion in dealing with it. And you're exactly right. You can never arrest your way out of a situation, ever. The large part, and we do very well, people that want to prey and have negative behaviors towards others, we will use the laws that we have to make sure that we arrest those individuals and apprehend them. But a large portion of what we do is helping people and giving them the guidance to further whatever that particular situation. Not every situation calls for an arrest at all. Sometimes, and you've seen it in the many correspondence that I've shared with Mayor and Council of the selfless actions of the Rockville City Police Department that they do. So those are important things. Craig, you want to talk about DPW stuff?
Sure. Craig Simino, Director of Public Works. The issue of what we're doing towards safety, et cetera, we do a lot of the day-to-day things. The police enforce the speed limits. We set the speed limits. We put the signs up. And so one of the big jobs we have is when those signs fall down, when something is not readable, when the lines aren't visible enough on the roadway, we take that very seriously. In addition, graffiti is something that we take very seriously. So we have our crews, our work crews, who go out there very quickly to address those type of things. But the rest of what we do probably falls under the umbrella of Vision Zero. And we used to talk about these things separately, but we now put it under that umbrella, if you would. We have a bicycle pedestrian coordinator in the department for the city, and he coordinates the Vision Zero policy and initiative for the city, and the police are part of that. So and sometimes they're calling us and asking us to do something. Sometimes we're calling them and we're leading the effort on some of these things. But we're working together both ways. Some of the specific things we're doing is sidewalks. Sidewalks have always been a big issue in the city, to try to find and replace those or install sidewalks on those missing sidewalk links. And additionally, we're looking at some initiatives on road diets and road narrowing. Maryland Avenue is one example where we took away a travel lane, put a bike lane on there. We're looking at East Middle Lane and North Washington Street in town center area to put a narrowing there, eliminate some travel lanes and put bike lanes and slow and calm the traffic down. We've looked at lowering speed limits places, and we've gone and done some traffic assessments. Every time there's a serious accident or something, it's mapped. Our team looks at it. We go out and figure out what can be done, and we try to assess intersections. The city manager's been out there with us looking at some intersections, trying to figure out what can we do. Can we do something at this intersection that we did at another intersection? And Ahmed and his team are really the nut and bolt of that. He has some dedicated people who can collect some data, who can go out there and assess the speeds, can look at whether there's a visibility obstruction that needs to be taken care of to make people see what's going on. Sometimes it's parked cars, and somebody reports to us. They pull out and they can't see down the road very well, or they can't be seen. And they're the team that go out there and look at them. Sometimes we'll move the parking restriction back, et cetera, like that. But it's a big team effort, and there has been a big emphasis from the mayor and council. How much more money can you spend on Vision Zero, I think is what you asked us, Councilmember Ashton. And how fast can you get things done? And so that's what's going on in the Vision Zero area. And the final thing I'll say is we now meet quarterly with Montgomery County Vision Zero Coordinator and State Highway. And we talk about the issues that are common to us, and we have a lot of state roads in the city, and we are, in fact, as Chief said, we are, in fact, pressing the state to step up the game where there's problems, because a lot of our accidents, pedestrian accidents, happen on state roads.
Okay. Can I just add something real quick? What Craig mentioned is some of the little things that mean a lot. A few months back, one of our very esteemed council members reached out to me, the one I'm looking at right now, and called me and sent me a picture of some very bigoted and racist graffiti and sticker that was on a electrical box. Well, normally when we have graffiti and those type of things, we'll reach out to Park and Recs. I reached out to Craig and I said, hey, listen, we get this off, we want to get it off right away. Well, Craig went himself on a Saturday with a scraper and scraped it off himself. That's the level of dedication that we have here in our city. You know, I just had to give you that example. Thank you.
That's awesome. So as we get to winding down, we're going to go ahead and take one last question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up, okay? Go ahead.
Jane Pontius. I've been in West End, Rockville since 1975 when I had married my husband, and we moved to Rockville, and his family have been here since '52. And I have a third generation across the street from me, my younger son. So we support the police department, have always found you to be courteous, energetic, problem solvers, and we could always count on whenever we had any type of need. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I was driving here earlier, I noticed the median message board on Hungerford Drive. It said RCPD hiring,
yes,
a 4-day work week, good pay. I would think that might attract a few people. You're in competition with a very low unemployment rate, and that's part of it. But I was thinking, what about the criminal justice major? I used to hear about that, taught at Montgomery College and maybe 4 universities, and I don't know if that's still in existence, but it might help get young people's interest from a theoretical standpoint earlier, and then they graduate and could possibly have a job waiting for them in police departments. In the light of the tragic Uvalde school shooting, we're reading in the media how nobody knew what to do, how to get in, what kind of doors, which way they open, keys and all that. And I'm thinking, in our county, in our city, are there officers who are trained ahead of time to understand the layout of schools and where to go and what to do, so precious minutes aren't wasted when an active shooter might be meandering through the hallways and wreaking havoc?
Thank you very much, Ms. Pontius, and it was wonderful seeing you again today. Let me take your last question first, because I think that's incredibly important. After the tragic events in Uvalde, I fielded many calls, and as I spoke to our team here, that happened right when we had hometown holidays. You know, so we while we were up at Redgate, we talked about that as a department. I can tell you uniformly to a person in our police department, we are not going to wait at all. You know, as a father, as a police officer, as a police chief, that's my job, to engage, go in immediately, and eliminate that threat, period. That's it. Okay. Every cop that I know and every training that we've done, I can tell you uniformly, would say the same thing. You know, it's not like, things changed after Columbine, and how we engage active shooters. It used to be a number of different people, you'd go in a team of 4. It's not like that anymore. First officer on the scene engages the best they can. That's our job. I can tell you with children, it broke my heart because I'm not waiting. I'm going in and I'm going to do whatever I can. God forbid something happens to me. But that's my job. I am not going to wait for a second. And I'm going to engage people, the most important, that are trying to take lives. And every police officer that I know in the Rockville City Police Department, the Montgomery County Police Department, Montgomery County Sheriff's, Maryland State Police would say the exact same thing. So thank you for that, but absolutely not. We're not gonna, we're not gonna wait. And then
Bravery and courage, that's really what it takes. Also, I want to give a shout out to Lieutenant Berry and Herman Cordero for faithfully each month meeting with our West End Citizens Association to give us statistical updates, what's going on in the city, and it keeps us connected throughout the West End of Rockville. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to say that when we put on this uniform, we're not playing dress up. It's not Halloween. We represent safety and security for our city, so we are going to engage people.
So I'd just like to say that this event was supposed to end at 8:30, but in all fairness, everyone didn't have an opportunity to ask at least one question. So that's what we're here for. We're here to listen. So I went ahead as Director of Communication and stretched this program out. So we will take this, and Ms. Stanita has a question, and we'll go to her, if you don't mind, Chief.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Doctor.
I could not let this soiree end like that without thanking you so much for everything you do, everything that your RCP is doing, and also MCPD is doing. You and Commander Attenberg always come whenever you can, or send a representative to all our meetings every month, and that is not a small thing. Thank you, it's really appreciated. So I have a question that may not be really, I'm not sure if it's really relevant, but it's of the realm of public safety. During this pandemic, everybody felt secure in their home. They were restricted, confined in their home, but yet you have people, individuals, calling nonstop. And this is a very intrusive way of getting people IDs and social security numbers and everything. So I was wondering if there was a way for you locally to be able to enforce some kind of laws to go after people who prey, especially on the elderly, in their homes, and making life less safe within their own homes, to address this kind of telecommunication issues and cybersecurity issues.
Doctor, number one, I want to say thank you. For those people who don't know, Dr. DeSanito is the president of Lincoln Park Citizens Association. So I've met her in Lincoln Park. We've become very good friends. You're absolutely a wonderful person. So thank you for always your support. And love you to death. And you've been fantastic, you and your family. And Zoe, congratulations. Happy graduation. So yes, I mean, during the pandemic, there's all sorts of fraud schemes that rose, whether it be utilities, phones. I get calls on my phones all the time, telling me that I'm delinquent in my taxes. And for me to call this, call a number. It happens all the time. Those things are usually do not engage, and we put out fraud alerts oftentimes, and we'll try to prosecute when we can. It's very difficult in the cyber world to find, to track it down to somebody, because a lot of times it's overseas. My advice to everyone that's listening is that when someone's calling you, asking you for information and data, whether it be license plate, social security numbers, last 4 of your social security number, credit card numbers, never ever give that to them. Never ever. Usually on almost all times, if it sounds too good, it's too good to be true. Whether or not somebody wants to gift you something, say, hey, if you respond to this email, you're going to get some sort of reward. Delete those things. Legitimate banks and services will not contact you that way. Utilities won't do that. So we oftentimes, when we see scams that arise systemically throughout throughout the county or throughout our city, we'll do alerts, alert people. So thank you very much, Doctor. And then just one more from the audience, Mr. Patty, correct? Sure. Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and take his so we can know what's happening here. Okay. We'll take his question, and then we have one question that came in via text, okay, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Is that okay? Of course, Kathy. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Patty.
Sure. Actually, this question relates to Vision Zero and the comments from DPW. I have heard from some of the neighborhoods in the area that there's interest in pedestrian bridges. And you mentioned specifically some of the challenges that you were having more generally with the state in terms of trying to get them to step up their game. First, I was wondering, what specifically would you like to see more help from on the state side to be able to improve the situation and help get closer to Vision Zero? And then the second one is more related to pedestrian bridges requests for places like King Farm near the metro stop there, and whether or not those are, you consider those to be feasible or helpful.
Wow. The first part of the question was to the state, and what are we looking for them to do more of? It's mostly assessing the state highways. We're not asking them to do anything off the state roads. We have 355, 28, Veers Mill, 911, the shortest state road in the state is right there on the bridge. Most of our accidents happen there. So when they happen, we want them to go out and do, or even proactively, we're asking them to do an assessment of what those intersections have, and to look at, do they have all the safety measures? Are they looking at the timing of the pedestrians? Are we looking at the crosswalks being in place? Are there any visibility issues there? What can be done to enhance safety on the state roads where our accidents are happening? So that's what we're pressing them to do. The mayor and council have written a letter to the state. I've written a letter to follow up on that letter, and Ahmed, he's the guy day to day pressing them on issues, trying to get this done, and then before we go into our quarterly meetings, we reassess to try to get this to happen. And they have started responding. Let's not pretend that they haven't done anything. One particular intersection on Veers Mill, they made some improvements, and we were all very happy with it. And of course, we're using that to say, okay, you did it there, now let's see where else you can do it, okay? To your second part of pedestrian bridges are very expensive endeavors. And we are looking at one right now that the mayor and council have made a priority in Twin Brook to try to connect the Twin Brook community across the railroad tracks to the Rockville Pike side of the Twin Brook area, near the Twin Brook Quarter development. And we're going through a feasibility to try to find a location. Of course, you've got to find ground where you can put the bridge, and then you've got to construct and put the bridge in, and then of course you got this monstrosity up there that a lot of people don't like. So they are expensive endeavors. They are now, where you're talking in King Farm, I believe, is crossing 355.
Yeah, big challenge.
Correct, and that's come to us that because of the concern crossing there, maybe a bridge might be a solution, and that's going to have to be something we take to the state and ask them, because the state owns the right-of-way there and everything. And so never, when we talk about a bridge to another transportation agency, that they jump in and say, oh yeah, we're ready to do it, let's go for it and everything. It takes a lot of momentum, it takes a lot of effort, and you got to kind of explore all the other safety possibilities along the way to convince them. But that is one that we have in our back of the head. We keep pressing. We're looking for them to assess the intersections, and if they assess it and can't come up with anything better, their own assessment may tell them that they have to do something like that. So that's what we're assessing. The intersections is the first step to figuring out what can be done, and the bridge is one tool. And of course, it's not the first one because it's very expensive.
Yeah, and just to note, you mentioned something. I grew up in a town where we had probably 30 or 40 different pedestrian bridges, and you mentioned the aesthetics of it. And one of the things that worked well for that town was actually engaging not only architects and engineers in the design, but also artists to help design something that was aesthetically pleasing.
Yes, that can help.
So, yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that. So the last question came via Councilmember Ashton via text, and I think we can just go ahead and close on this one too. With the recent gun-related incidents in the city, what are you doing, or what is the department doing to just reiterate the safety that lies in the city? Because there is obviously some concern because it was brought. So if you could just address that.
Well, there are a number of different, some of the gun violence we've had this year has not been random. These have been people that have been known to each other, that have been engaged in somewhat bad behavior. The incident we had near the city recently was a tragic shooting that was inside of an apartment. and it had to do with a domestic-like situation. We responded very quickly. We were able to make an apprehension. The same thing with some of the issues that we've had, the homicide we had in Twin Brook. The Montgomery County Police Department, and us worked incredibly well. The Major Crimes Division very quickly was able to bring those individuals to justice. Gun violence is something that we'll always strive to deploy our people and make the appropriate arrest and apprehension, particularly when it comes to firearms. And when you look at firearms in our community, there's a huge amount that some that have been used in schools that are unserialized firearms. That's a significant issue. And what we're seeing we've seen in the city are fairly young people that were almost everyone that's had one of those firearms has been a prohibited person that would normally, under the legal processes to purchase a firearm in the state of Maryland, would not be able to buy a firearm. Commander Hattenberg, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Chief. As the Chief was talking, the unserialized guns, also known as ghost guns, has been a huge problem countywide for us. I was looking up the statistics when we had that question earlier. Last year, we had a total of 71 guns that were unserialized, that were used in crimes that we took off, people who shouldn't have had them. This year alone, in 6 months, we're already up to 117. So if we continue on with that number, that's an astronomical number. We continue, we have a firearms investigation unit that works with our detectives along with major crimes and all the other jurisdictions, Rockville City included, to share information on people who reside in the area, who have had issues, who are prohibited folks that have been seen or known to have weapons. So we work with our undercover agents to safely take them off the streets before they're allowed to use them. And as the Chief said, when we have issues with crimes where they've had them, we then continue on with our research. We get search warrants for their houses, for their vehicles, et cetera, to find out, where are they getting these weapons? Are they stolen weapons? Are they, purchased legally, but they shouldn't have had them, purchased in another state? So we try to close the loopholes to minimize how many are out there. It is an uphill battle. We continue. We appreciate the state has been working with trying to close the loophole with privately manufactured weapons and who can purchase them, where they can purchase them. And now, I believe it's June of 2023, they're going to need to be serialized, and that should help. But we still have that problem. We still have a whole year of these weapons being out there, and we just continue working to make sure we get them off the streets from people who shouldn't have them.
Thank you, Commander.
All right. This has been very, very good. I think that communication cleans the soul. So we appreciate all of you for joining us tonight. Now, of course, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. The city is here for you. Rockville City Police Department is here for you. And we want to make sure that you know that we are listening. The listening doesn't stop today. It'll continue. And thanks again for joining us. I'm Catherine Kirk-Dantzler, Director of Communication for the City of Rockville, on behalf of the Chief of Police and all the other esteemed guests tonight. Thank you for joining Rockville. Until next time.
Thank you, everybody.